I hate to think about what the comment section of this review is going to look like. Hi, welcome to the Silver Spleen. My name is Walter White, and this is my review of Chasing the Dragon. I didn't like this movie, so I'm gonna go negative, and I'm gonna stay there, and I'm gonna talk about history. If you don't like it, leave now. If you stay, I don't want to hear about it. In the past few years, both Wang Jing and Donnie Yen have enjoyed success in the mainland China film market. Donnie has been mining a rich nationalism streak in China movies for almost a decade. From the mouth-frothing xenophobia of the first two Ip Man movies, to the uber-jingoism of Iceman. Hey, anytime you want to drop that deuce, we're waiting. Old Flexin' Yen has been unfailingly reliable in pushing the refrain of China up, hose down. Wang Jing has succeeded in China by offering light, innocuous movies that scrupulously avoid sensitive topics, or, if necessary, reframe them to gain the approval of Sapperft. 2013's The Last Tycoon historically should have been called The Last Drug Lord, since it tells the story of Big-Eared Du, one of Shanghai's most notorious dope peddlers. But you can't make heroes out of drug dealers in China, so he became a tycoon. 4 years later, a lot has changed. Wang Jing has figured out how you can make a drug dealer a hero and still get your movie screened in China. You just need to find someone worse than the drug dealer. How hard could it be? I mean, heroin isn't that bad, right? Chasing the Dragon brings Donnie Yen and Wang Jing together to remake not one, but 3 movies. Okay, 2.5. In 1991, Ray Loy starred as Limpy Ho in To Be Number One, the first of many classic Hong Kong big-timer biopics. That same year, Andy Lau played Lee Rock in Lawrence Lau's Lee Rock 1 and 2. And now Andy Lau is playing Lee Rock again, but it's just one movie. Chasing the Dragon tells the story of 2 men who become unfathomably rich because of the British refusal to do anything about endemic corruption in Hong Kong. That is apparently the only reason these 2 men behaved as they did. No, really, that is what the movie says. Hell, it's what the director says. In a recent interview, Wang Jing said, and I quote, "We're showing how the British colonial powers didn't do anything good for Hong Kongers. They were only colluding for bribes. Of course, not all of them did that, but maybe 70 to 80% did.
What have the Romans ever done for us?"
So this review is showing that Wang Jing's movies are all bad. Well, of course, not all of them, just 4 out of 5. And before anybody gets their panties in a twist, I think I'm the only person on Earth that gave From Vegas to Macau 3 a positive review. So calm down. I'm not stupid. I can easily concede that before the Independent Commission Against Corruption, anybody that wanted to be a police officer in Hong Kong had to participate in corruption, because if he didn't, he was likely to lose his job and or his life. That doesn't make what Lee Rock did okay. It just puts it in perspective. But there's quite simply no way that I can think of to excuse someone selling narcotics. There really isn't, so please spare me the moronic comments about how Limpy Ho was forced. Besides, it's not even like Sick Ho was a stand-up guy. Limpy Ho was a fucking rat. He was gonna drop a dime on Ma Sik Chun, aka White Powder Ma, until, that is, Ma jumped bail and off to Taiwan. Good riddance, you dope-peddling piece of shit. To this day, Ma Sik Chun's family will take people to court because they say that we're not allowed to say that Ma Sik Chun, the dope-peddling piece of shit, was in fact a dope-peddling piece of shit because he was never convicted in court of being a dope-peddling piece of shit. Which is funny because the family of this dope-peddling piece of shit owns Oriental Press Group, a company that I am sure in no way was founded with money gained by someone in your family being a dope-peddling piece of shit. But what do I know? I'm speaking English, and English sounds like British, and therefore I must be wrong. Which may at first sound like I'm being sarcastic, but that really is the core message of Chasing the Dragon. Was Limpy Ho a heroin dealer of vast wealth and power who brought untold suffering to Hong Kong and other places? Yes. Was Lee Rock a monumentally corrupt cop who eventually fled to Canada with more than 50 million US dollars? Yes. But the blame for their behavior lies squarely with the British colonial government, who allowed that kind of corruption to exist and to flourish. If the British hadn't allowed this corruption, no Chinese person would ever break the law. The British tolerance of this corruption, which allowed a cop to become grossly corrupt and amass a fortune, and allowed an illiterate thug from Chu Chow to become a drug kingpin,
kiss the rings, bitch,
is really the problem, not the extortion or the dope peddling. Can't you see that? The British forced people to become drug lords. There was no legitimate work anywhere in Hong Kong for Chinese people. It was an awful, cruel existence. You either broke the law or starved to death. That's why tens of thousands of people in Hong Kong risked drowning in sharks to swim to mainland China, where they could find freedom and jobs and happiness. Limpy Ho apparently found all of those things in the Golden Triangle in Thailand, where he dealt with corrupt Thai drug lords. Now, I'm sure there were, and still are, native drug lords in Thailand. But the original kingpins of the Golden Triangle were Kuomintang soldiers from the nationalist Yunnan army. They lost the Chinese Civil War, and they needed money. You see, they were forced to become drug dealers. The CIA wouldn't allow them to become farmers or merchants or anything else. Now, in fairness, it's not like Chasing the Dragon comes right out of the gate blaming other people for the actions of our two noble crooks. It's at least 5 minutes before the British are shown to be evil, terrible, awful cartoons. And speaking of cartoons, let's talk about Donnie Yen's performance. Donnie keeps telling us that he's working on his acting, and we keep waiting to see any evidence of that whatsoever. But that doesn't mean he's not entertaining. There's a lot of unintended comic value in watching Donnie Yen try to play a younger version of himself. It took me a minute to realize who they were talking to when someone in the movie says, "Oh, that young guy can really fight." And as long as we're talking about unintentionally funny, I think Donnie Yen started practicing his Chu Chow accent about 3 days after they started filming. Maybe the oddness of his language isn't really to do with the accent. Maybe it's the inevitable result of having spent 10 years ramming the China market down his own throat. But going back to cartoons, that wig, not a good corner to cut when they certainly spent an awful lot of money on seemingly everything else in this movie. If I'm going to be honest, I'd have to describe Donnie Yen's acting method, though I'm not sure I'm comfortable using either one of those terms, much less both used in conjunction, as essentially pre-stroke. But virtually every other thing in this movie is exactly the same way. Watching Chasing the Dragon is exhausting because everything in the movie is just so overstated and bludgeoning. This movie's blood pressure feels like it's about 10 seconds from having an aneurysm. It's as if the entire English translation of the script was written in capital letters. And in an unlikely homage to Stanley Kubrick, the script is 120 pages of "The British are evil, the British are evil, the British are evil, the British are evil." Please, spare me this one-note dumbness. Do we really need 2 hours of it? Maybe they need all of that running time to get the movie's message across in case anybody missed it. Or Donnie's latest workout method is beating a dead horse. You be the judge. And if you've made it this far, let me reiterate. I'm not saying the British were blameless. I'm not saying that at all. But, you know, it's kind of a big ask to lay off the blame and responsibility for being the head of a heroin empire on someone else and expect any audience not suffering a head trauma to go along with you. Then again, I guess Donnie Yen feels that he has good reason to say these things. From the same interview that I quoted Jing, "For Chinese to live in a world governed by white people, this is something I've experienced firsthand. This film is set in the 1960s and 70s when I was living in the US. I felt quite clearly about how Chinese were bullied when they lived in white people's society. It was real. The racism of 1970s Boston was indeed real. And I'm sincerely sorry that Donnie Yen had to put up with it, because it sucked and it was wrong. Donnie Yen knows exactly how bad racism can be and what it's like to have to experience it. Oddly, this didn't stop him from appearing in a Chinese New Year movie in blackface, Or, according to multiple sources, dropping the N-bomb on the set of Blade 2. What, you thought his role ended abruptly because of the script? So that, in a broad sense, is kind of my point and my problem with Chasing the Dragon. At one point, near the end of the film, there's a slavish rehashing of part of the end of Scarface. But you know what? Neither Brian De Palma nor Al Pacino ever tried to make us believe that Tony Montana was anything other than a greedy, illiterate piece of shit drug dealer. Tony Montana didn't blame anybody but himself, except Sosa. Tony Montana wasn't a hypocrite who tried to rationalize his own reprehensible behavior by blaming it on other people's reprehensible behavior. He owned being a piece of shit. Speaking of which, there are 3 title cards at the end of Chasing the Dragon. They went by so fast I couldn't read them. All I caught was the phrase corrupted empire. I doubt it was talking about the Middle Kingdom. And as long as I just said the word middle, there's an epilogue that suddenly pops up halfway through the end credits. I was on my way out of the cinema when it started, and most of the audience had already left. I don't know why it was put in such an odd place, but I do know that given the content of this particular epilogue, it does make it easier to edit Chasing the Dragon for the mainland release. Ugh. Believe it or not, there's things I enjoyed about this movie. It looked nice, there's a bunch of familiar faces, and on some levels it was entertaining. The problem I had is just this central conceit that somehow people were forced into becoming dope dealers. When this movie gets released to home video, I guess I'll update the description with a link where you could buy it because, you owe them that much. Now, considering the comments I'm likely to get for this review, I don't know why, but I'll ask people to click on my Patreon page because I could use the money because I'm not a dope dealer. If you enjoyed my review, please let me know and then seek professional help. If you didn't, keep your mouth shut. I told you when to leave. If you enjoyed the channel, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.